At 9:43 on a Sunday night, Daniel Cross walked into the Bellweather Hotel and asked for a room. The woman behind the desk looked at him, then dropped her pen. Daniel noticed. "Everything okay?" The woman didn't answer. She was staring at his face, not confused, not surprised, afraid. Daniel looked behind him. The lobby was empty. The woman slowly stood. "What did you say your name was?" to Daniel Cross. Her face lost what little color it had left. Then she whispered, "No." Daniel frowned. "No?" The woman stepped backward from the desk. "You can't be Daniel Cross?" He almost laughed. "I'm pretty sure I am." She didn't. Instead, she reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old brass key. A rectangular tag hung from it. Room 214. She placed it carefully on the desk. Daniel looked at the key. "I haven't checked in yet." The woman said, "You checked in 30 years ago." Daniel had been driving for 6 hours. He was tired. The rain outside was getting worse. And under any other circumstances, he would have turned around and found another hotel. But the highway behind him had flooded. The Bellweather was the only place still open. He looked at the woman's name tag. Margaret. "Okay," Daniel said. "I think you have me confused with someone." Margaret shook her head. "I don't. You just said I checked in 30 years ago." "Yes, I'm 32, I know." That stopped him. Daniel stared at her. "How do you know how old I am?" Margaret looked toward the staircase. The Bellweather was an old building. 3 floors. Dark wood. Brass fixtures. The kind of hotel that had survived by refusing to change. A grandfather clock ticked near the fireplace. 9:44. Margaret lowered her voice. "Room 214 has been closed since 1996. Daniel glanced at the key again. "Why?" "Because the guests never checked out." "Then call the police." "We did. They couldn't find him." Daniel waited. Margaret continued. "They couldn't find any record that he existed." Rain struck the lobby windows. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I'm too tired for this." He reached for his wallet. "I just need any room." Margaret didn't move. "Your reservation is still active." Daniel slowly lowered his wallet. "What reservation?" She turned the computer monitor toward him. The hotel system looked modern. A booking page filled the screen. Guest. Daniel Cross. Room 214. Arrival November 3rd, 1996. Departure blank. Daniel stared. "That's not possible." Margaret clicked the guest profile. No phone number, no email, no address. Only one note: "Do not reassign room. Guest will return." Daniel read it twice, then a third time. "Who wrote that?" Margaret said, "My father?" Margaret locked the front doors, not because Daniel asked her to, because she said she didn't want anyone else entering while they talked. Her father, Henry Vale, had owned the Bellweather in 1996. On November 3rd of that year, a man arrived alone shortly before midnight. He signed the register, paid cash, asked for room 214, nothing unusual. Until morning. The room was empty. His suitcase remained. His clothes? His wallet? His car was still outside. But the man was gone. Police searched the hotel, then the town, then the surrounding woods. Nothing. Daniel asked, "What does that have to do with me?" Margaret walked into a small office behind reception. She returned carrying a ledger. Old. Dusty. She opened it to a marked page. November 3rd, 1996. One line had been circled in faded red ink. 214. Daniel Cross. Daniel stared at the handwriting. Then he noticed the signature. His signature. Not similar. Not close. His. Daniel pulled out his driver's license. The signature along the bottom matched. Same sharp D. Same strange upward line at the end. Margaret whispered, "My father kept the room exactly as it was." Daniel looked toward the staircase. For 30 years, he said the guests would come back. Why? He never told me. Margaret closed the ledger. He died waiting. At 10:07 p.m., Daniel climbed the stairs. Margaret followed. The second-floor hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and furniture polish. Room numbers passed. 208, 209, 210. Then a section of wallpaper slightly darker than the rest. A door. 214. Daniel stopped. There was dust along the frame, but none on the handle. He noticed immediately. Someone's been in here. Margaret shook her head. No. There's no dust. I know. Daniel looked at her. Margaret held out the brass key. He didn't take it. You open it. I can't. Why? My father tried once. And Margaret looked at the clean handle. The key stopped working for everyone except the guest. Daniel almost walked away. Then something clicked behind the door. A lock. Opening. By itself, the door moved inward 3 inches. Neither of them spoke. Daniel pushed it open. Room 214 did not look abandoned. That was the first thing he noticed. It looked occupied. A suitcase rested on a luggage stand. A dark coat hung near the door. A glass of water sat beside the bed. On the desk, a small lamp glowed warmly. Daniel stepped inside. Margaret remained in the hallway. You left the lamp on. No. Daniel touched the glass of water. Cold. Condensation ran down the side. He pulled his hand away. The bed was neatly made. A newspaper rested on the pillow. Daniel picked it up. The A.S.H.B.U.R.Y. Record. November 4th, 1996. The paper had yellowed with age. One article on the front page had been circled. Local hotel guest disappears without trace. Daniel read the first paragraph. A man identified as Daniel Cross had vanished from room 214 of the Bellweather Hotel. Age, 32. Daniel stopped. He was 32. He read further. The missing man was described as 6 feet tall. Brown hair. Scar beneath the left jaw. Daniel slowly touched the scar beneath his own jaw. He had gotten it at 17. A bicycle accident. Margaret watched from the doorway. Daniel whispered, "This article describes me." Then he saw the photograph, a grainy black and white image, police standing outside the Bellweather, a car parked near the entrance, and in an upstairs window, room 214, a man looking down at the camera. Daniel. He dropped the newspaper. No. Margaret stepped inside. Daniel backed away from her. You knew? I knew there was a photograph. You knew it was me. I was 9 years old when he disappeared. You saw him? Margaret didn't answer. Daniel moved closer. Did you see the man who checked in? Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, and. Margaret whispered, You look exactly the same. The room seemed smaller. Daniel walked toward the suitcase. Margaret said, Don't? He opened it. Inside were folded clothes, shirts, trousers, socks. Everything carefully packed. Daniel lifted one shirt. His size. His brand. Then he noticed a small tear near the cuff. He froze. Daniel was wearing the same shirt. He looked down at his sleeve. No tear. He looked at the shirt from the suitcase. Same pattern. Same faded collar. Same missing button near the bottom. Except his own button was still there. He reached deeper into the suitcase. A wallet. Brown leather. Daniel opened it. His driver's license. Not an old version. His current photograph. His current address. His date of birth. Everything correct. Expiration date, 2029. Daniel stared at it. The wallet had supposedly been inside a locked room since 1996. He checked his pocket. His real wallet was still there. He placed them side by side. Identical, except the wallet from the suitcase contained something else. A hotel receipt. Bellweather Hotel, room 214. One night. At the bottom, Valence due upon return, and beneath that, handwritten, You came back too early. Daniel wanted to leave. Immediately, he grabbed his coat and walked toward the door. The hallway outside looked wrong. Margaret was gone. The lights were dimmer. The wallpaper had changed. Daniel stopped at the threshold. The brass sign across the hall read, Ice. It hadn't been there before. He looked back into room 214. The room was unchanged. Then someone walked past the far end of the hallway. A man. Dark coat. Daniel called out. Hey, the man stopped. Back turned. Daniel stepped into the hall. Sir? The man slowly looked over his shoulder. Daniel couldn't see his face clearly. But something about him felt familiar. The posture. The shoulders. The way he held his left hand. Daniel moved closer. The man walked around the corner. Daniel followed. The hallway ended. No stairs, no elevator. Only a window. Rain outside. Daniel looked down. The parking lot was full. Cars from another time. Boxy sedans. Old station wagons. A police cruiser with a light bar from the 1990s. Daniel stepped backward. Behind him, room 214 was gone. He ran. Doors passed on both sides. 215, 216, 217, then 214 again. Daniel stopped. The brass key was already in the lock. The door opened. Inside, a man sat at the desk, dark coat, back turned. Daniel couldn't move. The man spoke. "You shouldn't have opened the suitcase." Daniel recognized the voice. His own. The man turned. Older. Maybe 60. Same face. Same scar. Gray hair. Tired eyes. Daniel whispered, "Who are you?" The older man looked almost amused. "You know?" "No. You just don't know when." Daniel stepped backward. The older man said, "Close the door." Daniel didn't. "Who checked in here in 1996? The man looked at the old newspaper. "You did?" "I wasn't born. I know." "Then how?" The older Daniel looked toward the window. "I spent 30 years trying to answer that." Daniel's breathing changed. 30 years. The older man nodded. "For me." He pointed toward the hallway. "Not for them." Daniel looked outside. The corridor had changed again. Modern lights, modern wallpaper. Margaret stood at the far end, frozen. She could not see the older man. Daniel turned back. The chair was empty. Only the dark coat remained. Margaret ran toward him. "Where were you?" Daniel looked at her. "What? You disappeared." "For how long?" She checked the clock on the wall. "Maybe 10 seconds." Daniel looked inside room 214. Empty. No older man, but something new rested on the desk. A photograph. Daniel picked it up. The Bellweather lobby, dated November 3rd, 1996. The younger Margaret stood behind the desk beside her father. And entering through the front doors, Daniel. Not the older version. Him. Exactly as he looked tonight. Same clothes. Same shoes. Same watch. Margaret whispered, "That's the night." Daniel flipped the photograph over. Handwriting. 9:43 p.m. He checked his phone. A photograph from 30 years ago showed him arriving at the exact time he had arrived tonight. Daniel looked closer. In the background of the photograph, behind the 1996 reception desk, hung a calendar. November 3rd, and beside the calendar stood another person, a woman, dark hair, holding a stack of newspapers. Daniel zoomed in. Margaret leaned closer. Neither spoke. The woman wore a gray jacket. At 10:31 p.m., Daniel called the Ashbury Record. No answer. He searched online. The newspaper still existed. Barely. Its archive went back more than a century. Daniel searched his own name. One result. November 4th, 1996. Olo Call hotel guest disappears without trace. He opened it. The article was different now. The description remained. Age 32. Brown hair. Scar beneath left jaw. But the final paragraph had changed. Daniel read it aloud. Hotel owner Henry Vale stated that the missing guest left one instruction before disappearing. Margaret moved closer. Daniel continued. Room 214 must remain untouched until November 3rd. He stopped. Margaret said, "What year?" Daniel looked at her. "Tonight." The room phone rang. Both of them jumped. Daniel stared at it. "One ring, 2, 3, he answered. "Hello?" The woman's voice, calm. Familiar somehow? "Mr. Cross?" "Yes." "This is the archive desk." Daniel looked at Margaret. "What archive?" "The Ashbury Record." He tightened his grip. The woman continued, "I'm calling about the photograph you requested." "I didn't request a photograph." Silence. "Then you will." Daniel said nothing. The woman spoke again. "Please don't leave the hotel before midnight." "Why?" A pause. "Because that's not when you arrived." The line went dead. Daniel packed nothing. Took nothing. He walked out. Margaret followed him down the stairs. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere else." He crossed the lobby. The grandfather clock read 11:06. Daniel opened the front doors. and stopped. The parking lot was gone. Outside stood the Bellweather Hotel. Another Bellweather. Across the street. Same building, same windows, same sign. Daniel looked back. He was still inside the original. Across the rain-soaked road, the second hotel lobby glowed warmly. A man entered through its doors. Daniel. Same clothes. Same bag. He watched himself approach the reception desk. A young girl stood behind it beside an older man. Margaret whispered, "My father." Daniel turned to her. She was staring across the street. At herself, 9 years old. The second hotel existed for only a few seconds. Then lightning flashed. It was gone. The parking lot returned. Daniel's car sat where he had left it. Neither of them spoke. Then the grandfather clock chimed. Once. The hands jumped backward. 9:43 p.m. The lobby doors opened behind Daniel. A man entered carrying a travel bag. Daniel Cross, a second Daniel. He looked tired. Wet from the rain, 32 years old. He approached the desk, looked at Margaret, and said, "I need a room." Daniel watched from across the lobby. The arriving man turned. For one moment, their eyes met. Then every light in the Bellweather went out. When they returned, only one Daniel remained. Margaret never said which one. Police reports from that night are incomplete. Hotel records show Daniel Cross checked into room 214 at 9:43 p.m. The year field is blank. His car was found outside the next morning. His wallet remained in the room. His suitcase was packed, and on the pillow, police found a copy of the Ashbury Record. The newspaper was dated 30 years in the future. There was one photograph on the front page, room 214, a man standing at the window. Older, gray-haired, waiting. The Bellweather Hotel closed 6 months later, but the building was never demolished, and according to county property records, room 214 still cannot be legally reassigned. Not because of a police investigation, not because of the missing guest, because the room is still occupied. The current reservation remains active. Guest, Daniel Cross. Arrival, November 3rd, 1996. Departure, blank. And once every year, at exactly 9:43 p.m., the lamp inside room 214 turns on. If you enjoy mysteries where the evidence refuses to fit into one timeline, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if the woman in the gray jacket caught your attention, watch the previous story. A woman received photos from tomorrow's newspaper. Because Nora Bell found photographs of events before they happened. And 30 years earlier, someone who looked exactly like her was already standing inside the Bellweather Hotel. Which raises a much worse question. Was Nora documenting the future? Or had she been trapped inside it long before she ever received the first photograph?